Part 1, The Silent World. The UHS Vigilance dropped out of quantum slip 3 hours behind schedule, and Admiral Grace Morrison knew immediately that something was wrong. "Sensor sweep," she ordered, her voice cutting through the bridge's quiet efficiency. "Full spectrum. I want everything within 10 light seconds mapped and analyzed." Lieutenant Commander Reeves bent over his console, fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Aye, Admiral. Initiating active scanning now. Passive arrays are, ma'am, I'm getting nothing from New Eden's beacon network." Morrison's jaw tightened. New Eden was humanity's newest colony, home to 3 million souls spread across 2 continents of a pristine world that had taken 20 years to terraform. The colony maintained 17 orbital beacons that transmitted constantly, navigation data, weather reports, civilian chatter, the endless digital heartbeat of human civilization reaching out to the stars. Silence from New Eden wasn't just unusual. It was impossible. "Communications, hail the colony. All frequencies." Ensign Park's hands trembled slightly as she worked. "Broadcasting on emergency channels, Admiral." No response. "Trying commercial bands, nothing." "Government frequencies, ma'am, there's nothing. Not even carrier waves." The bridge fell silent except for the whisper of life support and the distant hum of the Vigilance's fusion cores. Morrison had served in the colonial fleet for 32 years, had seen disasters from reactor failures to plague outbreaks, but every catastrophe carried noise, distress signals, panic transmissions, something. This silence felt like a tomb. "Ma'am." Reeves looked up, his face pale. "Long-range optical is resolving now. You need to see this." The main view screen flickered, and New Eden filled the display. Morrison had seen the colony 3 years ago during its dedication ceremony. She remembered a blue-green jewel wrapped in white clouds, city lights glittering like diamonds against the darkness, orbital stations catching the sun like silver promises. She remembered standing on the observation deck, watching children play in parks that had been lifeless rock just decades before, and thinking that this was what humanity did best, taking dead worlds and filling them with laughter. The world on her screen bore no resemblance to that memory. New Eden's atmosphere churned with brown and gray. Massive storm systems, unnatural in their geometry, spiraled across both hemispheres. Where city lights should have sparkled, there was only darkness punctuated by the dull red glow of fires. The orbital stations were simply gone, no debris fields, no wreckage, just empty space where millions of tons of metal and ceramic had floated days before. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. Morrison's training took over, pushing emotion into a box she'd open later, somewhere private. "Navigation, take us into high orbit." "Tactical, I want full defensive posture." "Engineering, charge all weapons systems and keep our quantum drive hot." If something did this, it might still be here. The Vigilance was a heavy cruiser, one of humanity's most powerful warships, but Morrison suddenly felt very small. She'd commanded ships in pirate actions and border disputes, had fought corporate raiders and put down 2 attempted rebellions. She understood violence between humans, the politics, the economics, the terrible logic of it. This was something else. As they descended into orbit, details emerged that Morrison's mind initially refused to process. New Eden's capital, New Promise, had been home to 800,000 people. She could see its outline from orbit, but only because the destruction followed the city's borders with horrible precision. Where buildings had stood, there was now blackened earth and ash. The surrounding farmland, untouched, made the devastation look deliberately carved, a statement etched in atomic fire. "Radiation readings are off the scale," Reeves reported. "Detecting thermal signatures consistent with orbital bombardment. Multiple impact sites, hundreds of them. Each one placed for maximum damage to population centers. This wasn't a natural disaster, Admiral. This was systematic." "Life signs?" Morrison asked, though she already knew the answer. Park shook her head. "Nothing, ma'am. I'm scanning across every spectrum. There's nothing alive down there. Not in the cities, not in the countryside. Even the wildlife signatures are gone. 3 million people. Gone. Morrison forced herself to breathe. Launch reconnaissance drones. I want atmospheric analysis, ground surveys, and radiation mapping. Map every impact site. Someone did this, and I want to know how. The drones streaked away, silver needles diving into the poisoned atmosphere. For 2 hours, the bridge crew worked in near silence, compiling data that painted a picture of methodical extermination. The Ordhani, though humanity didn't know that name yet, had been thorough. They'd struck command centers first, then power generation, then transportation hubs. Civilian shelters had been targeted specifically, turned into mass graves with precision fire from orbit. Even the colony's emergency bunkers, buried beneath mountains, had been cracked open and sterilized. Admiral. Lieutenant Hayes from Tactical looked like he might be sick. I'm tracking weapon signatures from the impact sites. Energy discharge patterns consistent with, ma'am, these aren't human weapons. The wavelengths are wrong, the radiation decay is off, and the yield-to-damage ratio suggests technology we don't have. These strikes were at least 40% more efficient than our best bunker busters. The bridge fell silent again. Everyone understood the implication. Humanity had reached for the stars and found them empty. In 4 centuries of space exploration, they'd discovered dead worlds and bacterial life, but never intelligence, never civilization. The universe had seemed vast and lonely but ultimately safe, a wilderness to be tamed, not a jungle hiding predators. New Eden proved otherwise. Ma'am, Drone 7 is picking up something in high orbit. Reeves highlighted a section of his display. Electromagnetic signature, non-natural. It's small, maybe 10 meters across, and it's watching us. Morrison stood. Tactical. Not radiating weapon signatures, Hayes confirmed. But its sensor profile is active. It's scanning us, Admiral. Deliberately. Can we capture it? We can try. It's not maneuvering to evade. Do it. I want that thing in our cargo bay within the hour. Science team, prepare for immediate analysis. The Vigilance's grappler drones launched, magnetic fields spreading like nets. The alien probe, and it was clearly alien, its architecture unlike anything human hands had built, made no attempt to flee. It simply watched with sensor arrays humanity couldn't yet understand as it was pulled into the cruiser's cargo hold. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Vigilance's chief science officer, stood over the probe in the cargo bay, her reflection distorted on its surface. The object was beautiful in an unsettling way, smooth black metal that seemed to absorb light, arranged in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Symbols covered its surface, rising and falling in what might have been writing or might have been circuitry. It's still active, she said, running a handheld scanner across its surface. Power source is something exotic, not fusion or antimatter. It's been here for days, maybe weeks. Just watching. She looked up at Morrison, who'd come down from the bridge. Admiral, this thing recorded everything. The attack, the deaths, all of it. And it's transmitting. Morrison felt ice in her stomach. Transmitting where? I don't know. The signal's using quantum entanglement, instantaneous communication across any distance. I can't block it, and I can't trace it. Chen's voice dropped. Whoever sent this wanted to make sure someone saw what they did. They wanted credit. Back on the bridge, Morrison stared at New Eden, at the grave of 3 million souls who died without warning, without time to run or hide or even understand what was killing them. She thought of the families down there, of children who'd never grow old, of dreams that had died with atomic fire. Record this, she said quietly. Everything. Every detail, every measurement, every image. Then prepare a quantum burst transmission to Earth. Priority Alpha Omega. The Joint Chiefs need to see this immediately. Ma'am. Park hesitated. What do we tell them? Morrison looked at the alien probe on her secondary screen, at its incomprehensible angles and its silent judgment. She thought about humanity's 400 years in space, about the colonies they'd built and the dreams they'd chased. She thought about how every human alive believed, deep in their bones, that they were alone in the universe. Tell them first contact has been made, she said. Tell them it was hostile. And tell them we're at war. The message burst across human space at light speed, quantum-encoded packets of data carrying images that would change civilization forever. Earth received it first, and for 6 hours the Emergency Council met in closed session while rumors leaked and panic spread. Then they released the images, unedited, uncensored, the full horror of New Eden laid bare. Humanity saw the blackened cities and the dead world. They saw the precision of the attack and the alien probe floating in orbit like a monument to extinction. They saw what happened to species that drew attention in a hostile galaxy. On Earth, the stock exchange suspended trading as riots broke out in 3 major cities. On Mars, the Colonial Assembly declared a state of emergency. On Titan, Europa, and 100 smaller stations, people watched their screens and realized that the universe wasn't empty. It was just that everything else had learned to hide. But humanity had never been good at hiding. The Emergency Unity Council formed within 36 hours, pulling together representatives from every major colony and corporate entity. Ancient disputes were set aside. Mars and Earth, rivals for decades over mining rights and taxation, signed a mutual defense pact. The Belt Miners Union and the Jovian Authority, enemies since the Water Wars, pledged their resources to a common cause. Even the outer colonies, proud of their independence, bent knee to central command. Because everyone understood what New Eden meant. The aliens had chosen a target carefully, not Earth, too populous and defended, not Mars, too militarized and hostile, but New Eden. Peaceful New Eden, with its artists and farmers and children playing in parks under alien stars. The message was clear: submit or die, and know that your weakness will be measured before your execution. But humanity had been fighting itself for thousands of years, honing tools of war and practicing strategies of survival against the most dangerous predators ever known, themselves. They'd climbed from caves to stars not through peace but through endless, bitter struggle. They'd survived ice ages and plagues, world wars and nuclear fire. They'd fought over resources, ideology, and pride, and every conflict had taught them new and terrible lessons. The aliens had expected submission. They'd killed 3 million as a demonstration, a show of power meant to break human will. They'd left their probe to record the aftermath, to capture images of grief and despair that would spread across human space like poison. Instead, they'd started a fire. Admiral Grace Morrison watched from the Vigilance's observation deck as the first construction began. Earth's orbital shipyards, designed for commercial vessels and science ships, expanded overnight. Factories that had built pleasure cruisers and mining rigs retooled for war production. Asteroids were hollowed out and turned into fortress stations. Science labs that had studied terraforming began designing weapons that would crack worlds. Humanity mobilized with a speed that would have shocked their alien killers. This wasn't panic or chaos, this was purpose, crystallized and refined, the accumulated fury of 3 million dead and the ancient human understanding that survival means becoming more dangerous than your enemies. The alien probe, studied and analyzed, yielded secrets. Dr. Chen's team discovered quantum signatures in its transmission, patterns that could be traced. They found materials that could be reverse-engineered, principles of physics that human science had touched but never fully grasped. Every fragment of alien technology became a blueprint for retaliation. The probe also revealed coordinates, buried in its transmission protocols. The location of its creators. The Emergency Council met again, and this time there was no debate about whether to respond. The only question was how complete the response should be. "We'll call them Orthani," said Director Kim of Earth Security, studying the alien symbols on her screen. "It's our best translation of what might be their name in their transmissions. But honestly, we don't know what they call themselves," and we don't care. They killed our people. That's all that matters. Admiral Zhang of the Mars Defense Fleet spoke next. Our intelligence suggests this wasn't the first time. We've found references in old survey data, colonies that went silent, assumed lost to accidents or natural disasters. Now we know better. The Orthani have been culling us, keeping us weak while we were too naive to understand we were under attack. Then we stopped being naive, Morrison said. She'd been promoted to Fleet Command, overseeing the greatest military buildup in human history. We show them that humanity doesn't break. We don't submit. And we sure as hell don't vanish quietly. The council voted unanimously. The resolution was simple: total war. They called it the Great Forging, and it transformed human civilization. Every resource, every mind, every industrial capacity bent toward a single purpose. Shipyards operated 24 hours a day, printing new vessels in zero-gravity construction bays. Scientists worked in teams of thousands, sharing data across light years, racing to turn theory into weapons. Engineers designed ships not for exploration but for killing, crafting vessels that could survive in hell and deliver it in return. Humanity had always been good at war. Now they'd be perfect at it. On the Vigilance, Morrison stood before the alien probe one last time before it was transported to laboratories on Earth. She touched its surface, feeling the cold metal that had watched 3 million people die. "You wanted us to see," she whispered. "You wanted us to despair. But you made a mistake. You thought we were like the others, whatever other species you've murdered. You thought fear would break us." She stepped back, meeting her reflection in the probe's dark surface. "We're going to find you. We're going to show you what happens when you wake something that should have stayed sleeping. And we're going to make sure the whole galaxy knows, humanity doesn't vanish quietly." The probe continued its silent transmission, carrying Morrison's words back to its creators. Somewhere in the dark between stars, the Orthani received the message and dismissed it. They'd heard defiance before, from a dozen dying species. It always ended the same way. But they'd never fought humanity before. They'd never faced a species that looked at extinction and chose rage over surrender. The Great Forging had begun, and across human space, the fires of war were being lit. The Orthani had killed 3 million as a warning. Humanity would make them regret every single death.